there's no media. The media is completely lacking, right? You're not exposed to this in a more intensive way. And if you do, it's very, the interest is very cyclical. On CBC, they did Canada People's History and covered from was prehistory right up until the time of its airing, pretty much, and covering all kinds of topics. Like things got interested, people got interested again, things came back out, and new things were explored, and things like that. And then it died off again. And then you have a little bit connected to, the Normandy commemorations in 2004, 2005, at the end of the war. You have stuff with like that. We had the Year of the Veteran, and then it dies again. And like we don't keep up. The government doesn't focus on this at all. Like the government, it doesn't matter. I'm talking like generally speaking. It has nothing to do with party. It has nothing to do with any of that. Just the government, whoever's in power and all whatever that is not interested in this stuff. They don't seem to care. We don't commemorate hardly anything. We'll have like a little ceremony at the National War Memorial in the afternoon, and that's it. And nobody knows anything hears about it. So like it's not an interest of the government. The industry, entertainment is not that interested in Canadian stories because they can't sell it to an American audience. Sorry again, I'm not harping on Americans. I have so many American supporters. Thank you again for the super chat. You guys are awesome. I'm not attacking Americans. I'm just saying there's lots of you. There are so many Americans compared to us Canadians, right? We are tiny. You guys are huge. And things like Britain are bigger population and interested in different things, not interested in outsider stories, right? Again, I'm not saying you guys here or anyone who might be watching in the future. It's a part of this. No one wants to make Canadian stories. And then when we do make Canadian stories, they're terrible. Like we get Passchendaele. I don't want to rant, but we get Passchendaele, and it's awful. It's an awful movie. It doesn't even make any sense. The story is nonsense. The acting is terrible, terribly written. Like it was so bad, and it was the most expensive Canadian film, and then we get that piece of garbage. So no one's ever going to invest in it again, right? No one's going to put any money up when this is the result. We get crap like Passchendaele, or we get The Valor and the Horror. God, it comes up. It lives back rent-free in my head, I'll admit it. But we get crap like that. They pump all this money into it because they think that it's fine now and we can get away with it again. And then they produce garbage, and then we're stuck again for another 10, 15 years with nothing. Or it's done privately, and it never gets heard about. Or it's just, we get this garbage on garbage on garbage, and we're stuck. And we get nothing. Those of us who are interested in it are fighting for the scraps, right? Or wanting to yell into the void about making Canadian stories. That's one of the reasons I did this channel, is because I'm, again, not bashing anyone. And because Tim Cook says this all the time, for those who read these books, we have to tell our own stories because no one else is going to do it. Sometimes I see people with more popular podcasts and channels being like, can you talk about DF? We should talk about Canada more. And I'm like, we're just fighting for scraps here? Like, this is so sad when we could be doing it ourselves. And that's why I think this is all part of this. People think it's boring. And I'm like, there are so many stories out here that are not boring. There are so many badass Canadians out there doing all kinds of badass things, from science to innovation to healthcare to business, government, military. And we're just like, yeah, whatever. Who else is making something? Like it's just like, or can you talk about this on this one? Like, oh, I want to hear about this from you. When we're doing it ourselves and we don't. This is why YouTube is great. Because I can do this, sort of. I can only do so much, right? It's just me. But it's just, that's why I started. I didn't mean to rant, but it frustrates me because I was in the same thought as when I was younger. I thought it was boring. I was like, oh, it's just boring. We don't do anything fun. Nothing cool happens. There's no stories. There are so many stories that we're not telling people. Like, we're just sitting there doing nothing. Like, we have the Heritage Minutes, the famed Heritage Minutes. Those are great, but those are limited. They can only do so many, and they focus on all of Canadian history. So they can only cover so much, but there are so many stories out there that don't get told for all kinds of reasons. Education, I think, is the number one place where the problem starts, because we just focus on the same crap and talking about, the conferences that led to freaking Confederation. Of course, the 12-year-old kids don't care. Of course they don't give a crap about, delegates from Nova Scotia fighting with the delegates from Ontario about what Confederation is going to look like. Of course, nobody gives a crap. You got to hook people, and we don't hook people. We just don't care. And then it just goes away. And it drives me nuts.